All right, so I would just like to again say welcome, everyone. And we're very excited to be launching this speaker series with MUTEK. We have three representatives from MUTEK here with us today. Alain Mongeau, who is the founder of the MUTEK Festival in Montreal. Lola Baraldi, who is the assistant director of the festival, and Sarah McKenzie, who is the director of the MUTEK Forum. So we've been working with all of you to organize an exciting lineup of artists. And that first artist who's going to join us today is Portrait XO. Portrait XO, I'll introduce a little bit later when she speaks, but she is based in Germany and is visiting us today from LA. I also want to just say thanks again to Helsa Valente and to Jane Tingley for helping us to organize this event. And just before we start, I'm going to begin by reading the land acknowledgement. So we are grateful and we recognize the many Indigenous nations have long-standing relationships with the territories upon which York University campuses are located. The area known as Tekaronto has been caretaken by the Anishinaabe Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Huron-Wendat, and it is now home to many First Nation, Inuit, and Métis communities. We acknowledge the current treaty holders, the Mississaugas of the First Credit Nation, and this territory is subject to the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement to peaceably share and care for the Great Lakes region, for which we are very grateful. In addition, in the Department of Computational Arts and AMPD, we would also like to acknowledge the virtual networks on which our activities and gatherings are sited is a product of Silicon Valley and the Zoom headquarters, which are located on the Muwekma and the Ohlone territories. All right, everyone. Well, thank you. So with that, I'm going to turn our screens over to Alain, who is going to take some time to introduce MUTEK and tell us a little bit about the festival. I have had the benefit of attending the festival when I was living in Montreal, and I can say that there is always a wide mix of artists, musicians, digital media technologists who make up the festival. So I look forward to hearing from you, Alain. Artists, musicians, digital media technologists who make up the festival. So,
okay. Can you hear me well? Okay, I don't hear myself, so that's good. Yeah, so thanks for having me today. I'm Alain Mongeau. I'm the founder of the MUTEK Festival. I'm going to speak a little bit about the history and maybe evoke a little bit the prehistory of the festival also, and try to describe what we've been doing in the last 26, 27 years. I'll share my screen. Let's see if it's going to work. It worked before. Can you see it? Perfect. Okay. So, MUTEK. The festival was launched in Montreal in the year 2000. We consider the festival as being it says, an international platform for the dissemination and development of digital creativity in sound, music, audio-visual arts, and immersive technology. So I'm the founder of the festival. I've been there since the beginning. Currently, the co-general director and still the artistic director of the festival. Previous to being involved with MUTEK, I actually started my career as an artistic director in 95. So that means about over 30 years ago. I've been doing the same thing for about 30 years. I was actually the program chair of the International Symposium on Electronic Art, which is called known as IZEA, which was held in Montreal in 95. So that was 5 years previous to MUTEK itself. After the symposium, I moved on to be involved in the Festival of New Cinema in Montreal, where I was actually in charge of the new media component of the film festival. And as such, that was in 97. I was there from 97 to 2001. And I was in charge of the digital, yeah, but back then we used to call it new media. And my task was to develop a programming that and like present content that had to do with, let's say, image interfacing with new media, what maybe today we would call digital media or digital art. MUTEK came in 2000, and as such, I considered it to be the flip side of what I used to do with the film festival, meaning that the idea was to create a festival dedicated to new media, but in conjunction with music and sound. And I was actually involved at it both at the film festival and at MUTEK at the same time, the two events being 6 months apart. And it kind of allowed me to have like two platforms to actually cover the field of what we called the new media back then. The gesture of creating MUTEK was also a little bit to, let's say, launch a festival dedicated to digital arts as an artistic discipline. Since I was involved with the film festival for a few years prior to MUTEK, I was composing with like the different generations of practices, cinema and video. And within the film festival, it was a bit of a struggle. So when the opportunity came to create a festival dedicated to digital culture in a larger sense, that's when I was able to, let's say, launch MUTEK. So the idea was really to have a festival focus on the artistic practice where it intersects with digital technology. The idea was to present artists and works using showcasing the creative use of digital technology. In a sense, in the word MUTEK, you could see the conjunction of music and technology. But for us, the mu in MUTEK was always referring more consciously to the notion of mutation. One of the components of MUTEK since the beginning, since 2000, was the fact that although the festival is associated to electronic music and people could think of automatically to DJs, we decided to distinguish ourselves by focusing mainly nearly 100% on presenting live acts, live musicians on stage or live projects. And it was always about, again, showcasing the use of digital technology. So some pictures here showing the kind of setups that we or projects that we would be presenting. Another notion that was always and is still important to us is the notion of immersion. So it was always about creating a context for the audience to be immersed in technology, and that either in sound or in image or the conjunction or of both. So this notion of immersion has always been part of the festival from the beginning, not just frontal, but creating, you can see here, immersive screens. Again, this is another type of setup with multiple screens. Again, more pictures like that. So this notion of an immersion has always been crucial to the festival. Another element is you'll see later, but we use different venues, and every time we use a venue, we try to we come into the venue and try to transform it to, again, create a bigger sense of immersion, and as such, it entails some form of stage design. So this is a regular venue in Montreal called the Metropolis, or now it's called MTELUS. And every time we do present programs there's a form of intervention in the venue itself. So we transform it to enhance the notion of immersion and the relationship of the audience with the artist and the works. Again, a few examples of the type of stage design that we've been doing in the past. In the last 10 or so years, we've had access also to a dome at the Society for Arts and Technology. Our offices are actually there since 2 years now. In the office that actually holds in the building that actually holds this dome. So in a sense, the dome is the ultimate incarnation of like an immersive context. Some of those images in the dome. As I said, we've been using different venues in the heart of Montreal. Every year, it's a different kind of combination. We have different permutations of venues. And as such, the festival is not just one place where people go. Like we use the different venues to present different types of work, different types of programs. And there's a quite important work that we do as programmers to make sure that there's a fit between the works and the venues. Again, creating the context for the artists to present their work in the best context possible. Just will present you a bit quickly the type of structure that a festival has. This is more or less the structure of the festival that is coming next August. So we basically have different components, again, spread across different venues. And we also have like a daytime programming here you see the layer called the MUTEK Forum. I'll go quickly on the different components. We call them series, and each series is presented in a different venue. As I said, we have the MUTEK Forum, which is a daytime component with conferences, workshops, panels, Q&As, etc. It's an extension of the music program. And it's a quite over the years it has gained quite a lot of importance within the festival itself. The experience series is our outdoor free program. It runs for 6 days during the festival, and it's free, and we consider it as an important entry point to the festival. So we present different types of performances, and some of them are relayed in the indoor programming. We have the A Vision series, which is a seated series indoors, and it's where we present the most spectacular audio-visual performances. The Nocturne series is also a series that runs throughout the festival. So it's 6 days. And we have actually it's on 2 different floors at the Society for Arts and Technology. And it presents a quite wide range of projects over the 6 nights. We have 2 nights as part of the Metropolis series, which, as it says here, it's a big room. It's the most accessible, probably the largest venue we use, and it's the main, let's say, convergent point of the Friday and Saturday late night programs. And as it says, it's one of the places where we have the most also, let's say, spectacular scenography. We also have another series, which is called the Play Series, daytime programming, 2 or 3 days for more experimental projects and focused listening. Let's see how I'm doing on time. Over the years, again, as I said, the festival, one of its main, let's say, aim has always been to showcase projects and artists that use technology, new technologies. And the festival has been, if you look at the evolution of the content we've been presenting, it's kind of it showcases a little bit the evolution of, again, that exploration and integration of new technologies. So it always makes me laugh when I say that we're probably the first festival that presented a laptop performance in the year 2000. Nowadays, it's so common, but back then it was a novelty. So we're first festival that presented laptop performances. A few years later, we presented a laptop orchestra, which was again, something totally new. The idea that you could connect actually computers together and have artists, musicians jam together. To different artists. I like to mention the fact that this is an artist called Robert Henke, Monolake, who's both an artist and actually an engineer. And he's one of the co-founders of the Live Ableton software. And actually, Robert Henke is one of the artists that we've been featuring many times over the years, following his career, because every year or every time that we've presented it, he came with like new ideas and new ways of using technology. So again, when we did this laptop orchestra, he was the mixer of the all the artists were using early version of Live Ableton, and Robert was actually at the mixing board, mixing them all together. And then we presented this project again by Robert, which is a mix of robotics, light, music, using this canvas as an instrument. And then later, he started to use laser technologies in his shows, using laser and an instrument. So an artist like Robert Henke is kind of illustrates the kind of evolution of the festival and the kind of work that we've been featuring. And there's a few artists like that we've been following. So this idea of the festival as, showcasing interaction with technology. Here you see a number of printers being used again as a sort of stage design for quite elaborate performance. This is Matthew Herbert again, entangled in the technology. Examples, more examples. This is Martin Messier, Montreal artist, again, using, exploring different types of technologies here. Michela Pelluccio. This Fuse from Italy. Again, lately in the past few years, we've been integrating artists using VR, and of course some AI projects nowadays. So since there's more and more artists using them. As I said, I mentioned we use like elaborate stage design, but some artists come actually with their own innovations in terms of stage presence. So for instance, this is a performance that was presented, I think over 15 years ago by Richie Houghton, Plastic Man, and that was his part of his project design. This was at Tobin. Again, it's something we had the world premiere of this project, which is called ISAM, and this is actually we had like a creative dialogue with the artists that came up with this project that after that started to tour for many years. But it was hosted in Montreal for the first time. And actually, it's a position that we try to have this dialogue with the artists to try to have them come with new ideas. And this is one of them. Another example, more examples. One of the, let's say, position of the festival is we always try to find different ways to open up the festival and include and invite a larger public into the festival. Like I said, it says here, it's to bring the digital arts in the public sphere. So I mentioned the outdoor stage that we have, which is free, but there's also been different types of intervention. So this is like our outdoor stage. Again, more. We're also one of the first festivals that brought mapping in Montreal. For those who have been in Montreal nowadays, there's many different projection surfaces downtown Montreal running all year round. But before that, we had a few projects that we hosted in the city before it became so common. This is one of the in the old Montreal. Another example here. This was actually a major, more like a diaporama. I'm not sure outside. In the last 2 years, since 2024, we added a new component to the festival, which is called the Digital Village, Le Village Numérique. And it's a sort of trajectory of about 15 to 20 installations in downtown Montreal around the venues that we use for the festival itself. So again, that's all about a gesture that the festival has taken to democratize access to digital art, in this case through installations. So those are some examples of projects we presented outdoors. In the last years also, we developed a VR collection of titles where we actually invited some audiovisual artists that had audiovisual performances to transform their performances into VR experiences. So we've had 3 titles produced in this form. MUTEK is also present on the international stage, if I could say. When it wasn't part of the plan when we started the festival in Montreal, but different people came to Montreal and actually wanted to, let's say, transplant the idea of the festival in their home countries. So over the years, a network of MUTEK festivals developed in different places. At the moment, we're present in 6 cities. We celebrated Mexico for the 20th edition 2 years ago. Barcelona 15 years. In Tokyo last year was the 10th edition. And we're also present in Buenos Aires, Santiago, and Dubai. What's interesting with that is the MUTEK could be seen as a seed. And when you go to those places where the festival happens, you recognize, let's say, the elements of MUTEK, but it's adapted in different ways in each territory. So it's both it's same and it's also different at the same time. And it creates a sense of community. So all those cities, you have creative communities that develop over time, and they're kind of like-minded nodes, and there's a form of circulation and of cross pollination of ideas and the circulation of artists. So these are images from Tokyo. So that's it for MUTEK. The best way to discover it is actually to live it. And the next edition is end of August, so you're all invited. 27th edition.
That's great, Alain. Thank you very much for that introduction to the festival. And I have to say, congratulations on and to yourself, but to everybody involved with MUTEK on going for 27 years. It's quite remarkable, I think, to have a festival, endure for that long, and a festival that clearly has grown over the years to incorporate, a number of venues in the city, to incorporate those outdoor spaces, but now to begin to be taking on or working with some international partners. You must be very pleased, I would expect.
Well, what I'm happy about, I must say, is how relevant the festival continues to be. I mean, we're quite lucky because, let's say, innovation is part of our DNA. It's part of what the festival is about. It's always about showcasing new stuff. So in that sense, we just need to ride that wave. And I think, the festival will never be irrelevant in itself. And an example of that is, and quite proud of it, but it comes with a kind of a responsibility. So we do a call for proposals for Canadian artists to perform at the festival. And this year we've had 550 submissions just from Canadian artists. And that was up from 450 last year. So you see that the interest for the festival still continues to grow.
Yeah, and I would imagine it's become an important place for Canadian artists in particular, those of us working in digital media. But as you say, it also provides a showcase, I think, for Canadian artists on that international scene as well, which is great. We do have a couple of minutes for questions, so I'll ask if there are any questions. You can type them in the chat, or you can open your microphone and say hello and ask a question. Are there any questions out there? I know that Hersa Valente is watching the chat as well.
I just wanted to let you know that you have a lot of thanks and congratulations by Moet for your talk, Alain, on the YouTube chat, just to pass it over.
That's great. Well, if no one else has a question at the moment, I wouldn't mind asking, I guess, how you think the festival has changed over the years. I mean, you sort of gave us, you sort of suggested that a little bit in some of the projects that you showed, but is there anything that you think, sort of reflecting back, that's changed over the years, or anything that surprised you perhaps?
Well, yeah, I think the festival, because again, I didn't mention that, but it's a non-commercial festival. We're a non-profit. We benefit from, public funding, and in that sense, we feel a certain responsibility. And I'd say the festival has become more and more how do you say that? Like the sense of responsibility is something that has grown. Like I remember at the beginning of the festival, we would just book artists that we would like and not really think about so much. It was more about like the aesthetic of things and all that. But over the years, especially in the last 10 years, like we've been more aware of issues like let's say parity, diversity, sustainability. So I think there's we grew to become more involved socially in a sense. I don't know if it makes sense at all, but and as such, I think it loops back to the sense of responsibility. So let's say programming or presenting the festival is not just about presenting artists. It's also about like the forum. We have a lot of discussions on social issues. We also have like an incubator project where we have artists that you know could we follow a certain cohort of artists to try to prepare them to perform. So I say that our action it has evolved to be not just presenting, but to be nearly involved, like 360 in different elements of the scene.
That's great. And the other question that kind of went through my mind or goes through my mind, as I said, I mentioned I lived in Montreal for 10 years. I was a faculty member at Concordia University, and there is a rich and diverse digital media scene in Montreal. And I just wondered if there's anything you could speak to specifically about Montreal, the city, why MUTEK has necessarily been able to thrive there.
Yeah, well, I don't know. Again, I've been involved for 27 years, but I think MUTEK has been an important player to have actually the digital creative scene of Montreal evolve. I mean, at the moment, I'm not sure how many, but I think there's probably over 100 studios working in this field, some doing creative works. I mean, there's a very, very, very impressive community here that, like I'd say, has reached again a quite impressive critical mass. I think MUTEK was part of like why it has grown so much, because by reaching, bringing all these artists to perform in Montreal, we create a whole network internationally that kind of inspired different people to actually start getting involved in this scene, etc. So I think we're part of the fabric. And as such, there's so many different players in, let's say, the Montreal ecosystem at the moment that makes it a quite exciting place to be, to do things and to be inspired by others. So again, it's been a process where 25 years there was hardly anything.
No, I think that's great. Well, I certainly appreciate all the work that you've done and that MUTEK has done. I don't know if Lola or Sarah might want to add anything before we move on to the next part of the program. Anyway, I'll just leave that out there. There's Lola. Thumbs up. Okay, great. Very good. Thanks, Lola. Okay.
Maybe Sarah, do you want
Yes, Sarah's given us a thumbs up as well. That's great. Fantastic. Thank you.
I mean, I can just add, Alain touched on this as well, on the forum, the daytime programming side of things. But as Alain mentioned, it has been growing in scope and also in importance in terms of the grander context of the festival. But I would say that if you're interested in networking with the digital creativity ecosystem in Montreal, across Canada, and also internationally, the forum is an excellent entry point into all of that. So the festival, we shared the dates in the chat, takes place the 25th to the 30th. The forum is the August 26th to August 28th. And at the forum, you can attend talks, performance lectures, workshops, master classes, and then we also have a handful of different opportunities for exchange via cocktails, meetups, and so on and so forth. Portrait XO has participated in the forum twice now, I believe, across 2 years. So yeah, it's a really excellent opportunity just to be inspired, learn more about digital creativity, and to meet with folks who are shaping it.
Well, that's great. Thank you. I'm hoping that we can bring some students this summer actually to partake of activities such as the forum and, of course, the festival itself. And as you said, Alain, it's best to perhaps experience it firsthand. So I hope that some of us will have an opportunity to do that this summer. So thank you. I think at this moment, what I'd like to do is move over to Portrait XO and presentation from an artist who has been featured at MUTEK and has shown her work there. I guess what I would like to do is just begin with a quick introduction, Portrait XO, before I turn over our screens to you. Sorry. So Portrait XO is a transdisciplinary artist, musician, and independent researcher, and a data activist working at the intersection of sound, AI, and ecological futures. Recipient of the first German Human AI Jazz Key Award by ELB Jazz in 2023, her research-driven performances and installations have been supported by international residencies and festivals such as MUTEK, CTM, and Ars Electronica. She is founder of Sound Obsessed, a community of hybrid artists exploring conceptual creativity, and her practice explores the entanglement of AI and human creativity, who we become, what we owe each other, and what gets lost in or transformed in this exchange. So with that, Portrait XO, I would like to turn the floor over to you and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm extremely grateful to be here. Thank you so much to MUTEK, the entire team, for supporting me over the years, especially in the context of what's been happening of recent. Being based in Berlin and learning about Germany's biggest arts university, UTK, has frozen all the admissions for the only Masters of Arts degree in sound studies and sonic arts. While I didn't study at UTK, it played a really big role in me just living in Berlin and learning through other artists and really interesting musicians and creative technologists who have helped me also to evolve my practice. I started in classical music, and I was always interested and had a peculiar obsession with the impact of technology. And so that kind of organically took me to where I am now. So yeah, thank you so much. I'm going to share my page.
I like the use of the word shovel.
I think someone's audio is feeding in. The delay.
It'd be me. I'm going to close up.
Okay. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. I can't see anyone now. So yeah, I'm here to talk about my latest project, Boundaries of Agency. This was a project that came out of my last artist residency funded by ZKM, their Global Sonic Research Residency that I delivered at the end of 2025, also supported by Hellerau in Dresden. And the theme was future-proofing connection. And so over recent years, I've expanded my focus into ethical AI and spatial audio. And I really wanted to unpack more of this research that I had been doing over the years on the impact of AI, not just on creativity, but also on sustainability. And so this culminated into a two-part experience. Part one involved inviting participants into an isolated booth where they were asked questions from an AI voice to have the voices cloned with consent. So people filled out consent forms, had this very short Q&A, exited the room, and that experience was open for the public for about an hour. And then the second part was the immersive audio performance. So people were then taken into a separate room, and we had different layouts. So the image you see now, this is the final presentation. As part of the residency, what was really great was we had the opportunity to have a prototype work in progress show that was much earlier in the residency, and then the final delivery at the end of the 3-month residency. And so here I got to play with ceiling to floor projections and having everyone lay on these nice bean bags created a nice environment, I felt, for the purpose of this kind of listening. So before I dive deeper into what went into this project, it's probably a good idea to go through the background of all of the materials that I used. And it's an extension of my previous body of work called The Cost of Connection, which is what I've presented at MUTEK previously. It's a huge project where I focused a lot on data sonification. I was looking at the UN's 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And that all started from an invitation a few years ago to perform at Nobel Prize Museum, invited by Ali M. Demerel, who is an amazing visual artist. And he's also been at MUTEK, collaborated with Pretty Houghton quite a lot back in the days. And so we were invited to perform an audiovisual performance under the condition of picking a Nobel Prize laureate as inspiration. So we decided on Sir Paul Nurse, who won a Nobel Prize for his discoveries of key regulators of the cell cycle. And we read his book titled What is Life? Understand Biology in 5 Steps, which is a really beautiful short book that is really easy to read. And he breaks down in this really beautiful, elegant way how to understand the scientific interdependent similarities that we have structurally between humans, plants, animals, the rest of nature. And once we read this book, I went down another rabbit hole, and I was curious to learn more about Sir Paul Nurse and discovered that he was a climate activist as part of the Royal Society. He's worked with leading climate scientists all around the world, and they've put together documents very, very long time ago, like over 10 years ago, that was intended for policy and change makers to help them facilitate important decision making when it came to the impact of climate change. And so at the same time, I was looking at the UN's 17 Sustainable Development Goals, and this correlated with my interest in understanding how is AI impacting not just my creativity, but also the impact on the environment, on society. And so it was interesting to learn about these goals. I believe it's by 2030, which has been the mission. And I felt the urgency to learn more about it as I've been concerned about the climate crisis. And I just wanted to find out how could I connect more dots. And then my rabbit hole of sonifying data began here. I started to download interesting data like poverty and gender equality, crime rates, and electronic waste here from 2019. I was able to find graphs and also download spreadsheets in the format of CSV files that had numerical data. And I started collecting all the data that I wanted to work with, such as a century of world temperature anomalies. And this is what really started everything. And I was really concerned about this crazy, insane acceleration that has been happening and hasn't stopped. And as I started digging deeper, I found other reports that had this similar arc in context of the acceleration of AI. And I started digging deeper. And while I was collecting all this data, a good friend of mine, Noah Pred, who runs Manifest Audio, also from Canada, created these Maxwell Live devices, these sonification tools, which meant that I could use these devices within Ableton, which is what I use for both performances and creating interactive installations. And these devices allowed me to take all this data that I collected take the numerical information and sonify it. So turning this data into either musical notes or turning this data into effects and modulating parameters of a synth, as an example. And so I started to collate all of this data and try to figure out what are the best practices, what kind of approach would make the most sense to create meaningful experiences. So I will take you on a little journey of a few of the early experiments. And this here is what the Max for Live device looks like. That allows you to decide things like range of pitch, velocity, the length, and how you want the data to move. And you can also upload images, video, and text. I haven't tried those parameters yet. Those are more recent additions. So I will stick with that for now. And it is sonifying this data through a simple wavetable. So I have it at 444 BPM because it's a century of data, and this is just for moving through examples as quickly as possible. So here's example 1. So while that was an interesting experiment, I didn't feel the melodies or the sound really matched the data that I wanted to sonify. What's been interesting about sharing this work has been this idea that people who don't work with sound or have never worked with data sonification as a method of creating sound have this assumption that when they hear data to sound, or when they even see data to image, they think that it's a literal translation or an explicit translation. Most people aren't aware that there is a step of sound design and making these decisions of the aesthetics of the sounds based on what is your intention and what is the goal. And so for me, this didn't sound like weather or climate data. So I decided to try a few different approaches, and I wanted to get rid of melodies. So here's another example using a drum kit. I think this started moving more towards the right direction, but it still wasn't accurate, at least from my subjective point of view. And just to give a little bit more information about what you just heard and what it meant when you heard these different sounds happening. So this device takes the ceiling and the floor number, the greatest and the lowest number, and when you ask it to use things like pitch. So in this case, it's using the drum rack and moving, and it knows which range of those drum sounds it's going to move through. And things that like velocity means that when there is an anomaly, you're going to hear certain sounds louder, and also the length of the note. In this case, you wouldn't have heard that much of a difference in the length because these are short attack kicks. But if you use, say, a synth, then you might hear using the length feature to be more meaningful. So the last example I will show is what I landed on as what I felt was the most explicit translation or representation, I should say. And I decided to add a visual to support the audio. And this is what I have shown at places like the UN AI for Good Summit, and I have created installations with it and featured some of this in my performances. So for this final piece, what I think worked really well was having just one note throughout the entire sound from beginning to end. And I mapped that data sonification tool to manipulate the different effects of that synth. And I felt that I could hear the nuances. And so, like looking at this graph now, I have a visual understanding of what's happening, but I think sonically what's interesting is how you can feel more depth and nuance of what is happening in the data. Another example of electronic waste, 2019. And so while that was making a lot more sense to me about how this could be useful for understanding and feeling data differently, aside from looking at graphs and numbers, I wanted to dig deeper by speaking with other academics and professionals who have been doing similar things with data. So last year, I was invited by MIT to perform in their spatial audio event. And as part of the event, I got to listen to Dr. Kyle Keen present about some of his work. He used to be a professor at MIT. He's currently a senior lecturer in assistive technologies at the University of Bristol, where he leads research in the intersection of AI, human cognition, and assistive technology design. And due to his generative retinal condition, his dynamically changing visual impairment provides unique insight, perspective, and motivation to investigate the limits and potential for humans to interpret meaningful information from interactive technologies. He also has a background in quantum computing and computational physics. And so we had a lot of really interesting conversations, and he talked to me about this project he worked on with also a professor at MIT, Professor Aaron Kara, who visualized with a team echoes of a black hole. And Kyle helped with sonifying that data. And so what was interesting was learning about what that whole journey was like and what was the importance of doing something like this. And here is what this looked and sounded like. So when I had a chance to speak with Kyle a lot deeper about his practice, his approaches, his curiosity, and to learn more about the importance of this work, he stated it is essential that when we build shared representations, we can communicate about the phenomenology that we perceive and connect it in a meaningful way to the reality we wish to agree upon. So it's interesting to learn how they had all these iterations back and forth as he described to the physicist what was happening when he was sonifying the data, what kind of choices and decisions he was making in sound, until they both agreed that it matched what was being represented. He also stated the importance of having variable data, representations, and interpretation traditions. It can be as simple as thinking about the difference between looking at a traditional scatter plot, a line graph, and a bar chart of the same underlying data. Scatter plots can reveal technical data about each data point that can make it hard to interpret precise trends, while bar charts can help reveal statistical trends. There are things that hearing has been adapted to do with extreme compatibility with the human perceptual system. You can look at human echolocation as an example, and interpreting data using these systems will reveal different trends and conclusions. And I think that is something that has always been quite challenging, I think, for most of us who work with sound. It's harder sometimes to explain and give examples of the importance of sound art or translating data, not just visually, but through sound. And for those of you who aren't familiar with what Kyle just mentioned as echolocation, it is a method that blind individuals use to see by sound. So they will click their fingers to hear how their clicks bounce off of the reflections in a space so that they can have spatial awareness of where they are. So I will dive now into the build of boundaries of agency. So all this work that I just presented to you have also been featured in boundaries of agency in the performance where people were able to hear some of this data that I sonified. And I wanted to use that as a sound design as part of this experience because of what it was focusing on. So before I go into that interface, I'll walk you through a little bit what this journey was like. I love a good digital and physical whiteboard. This is my mirror board here. So there were a few iterations, and it was really great to do the first prototype show. I was able to get feedback and also iron out some glitches because there were glitches, and there always is when you're building new tech. And this was in collaboration with Pollination.ai, Thomas Haferlak, who I worked closely with, who helped build the UI based on what I wanted to achieve. And so for this project, it was really important that there was this this journey where people could understand that they needed to consent by filling out a form and what that actually meant, and to know that this whole experience was only going to happen where they were, and it was never going to be shared anywhere outside of that. So phase one, I really wanted to allow people to have their own space, their own isolated space in a room where there were speakers and a microphone to have this dialogue with this synthetic agent who was there to clone their voices. And I wanted to create an isolated booth because when I have experienced similar installations in the past, when it's in a big space, there is, I think, this kind of like people don't feel comfortable all the time of being expressive in public. And I think a lot of people tend to be quite shy. So I wanted people to have this moment and feel comfortable and be part of this. So by doing this, the whole goal of this was to create this embodied AI experience to facilitate a safe space where participants could be actively part of an AI generative experience based on their own voices to highlight the lack of protection around biometric data such as our voice. And so while phase one was happening, which lasted about an hour, and the Q&A that I have landed on as like a good chunk of time was 5 minutes. And so in the end, there were about 20 voices. So that was really great critical information to know. So I understand how I can scale this if I want to, if I wanted to have like multiple booths for more people to be part of the performance space. And the other interesting aspect of building this was to figure out the timing between the installation and the performance. So there were 2 hours between the installation being closed and me going behind the scenes and taking everyone's voices and creating a text-to-speech conversation. While I am able to do that real time as the first time doing this, I wanted to have the confidence of knowing that this conversation was going to have a certain flow and it wasn't going to go over time because when you're doing performances, there's a certain amount of time that you need to work within. And so it ended up being actually a combination of uh, creating the dialogue before the performance and also doing some real-time uh, text-to-speech synthesis during the show. And so then the next stage was to figure out how to stream the live audio part into Ableton. Luckily, because this was all it's a web UI, it meant that um, I can figure out the digital routing pretty easily. And then the phase two was when people were inside of the spatial environment. This is just a representation, not the official. But this was where people would be able to hear all the conversations between these synthetic voices move around in the space with sound design that supported the experience. So this is what the interface looks like now. And here I am able to create the script for the synthetic agent to introduce themselves. Ulam is the name of the AI voice. In Korean, it means resonance. And so another one of the things that was an interesting discovery was the first iteration, this Q&A was only I think it was 2 minutes, and I wanted to create as many voices as possible. So hence the shorter time frame, because actually we discovered you only need 30 seconds of a talking voice for it to sound really realistic. And but I increased it to 5 minutes because I discovered that when you ask really boring or plain questions that don't have an emotional answer, you end up having these really monotone voices. So the very first prototype show, when I created these conversations happening, all the voices sounded really monotone. And so I wanted to play with the emotional delivery a little bit. And so the official show that happened in November, some of the questions that I added as like an unexpected question towards the end was like, a pigeon has just pooped on your favorite meal. What do you say to the pigeon? So there were a couple questions like that. And what that ended up doing was capturing some of the people's laughters and also the sound of a smile while they talked. The weird part was when it came to creating these AI generated conversations, there were these unexpected laughs that didn't make any sense, and actually wanted to create that as part of the experience, to have the uncanny valley aesthetic. And the journey was intended to take them through this experience of feeling what it feels like to lose agency over the voices, to also hear the voices be abused in some ways. And when they finish the conversation, the Q&A with the chatbot, this is where the voices get cloned and saved. And here I can take individual voices and do text-to-speech there, or down below here, this was the latest edition where I could prompt a question or prompt a theme or a topic for all of the voices to have a conversation about. So things like argue about why regulating identity theft in the context of AI is so hard. And then going from these like heavy topics to just total absurdity. So I could prompt it anything for the AI generated text to be created and then do text to speech that way. Or I could also copy and paste my own script and then generate text to speech. This is an example of what I meant by it leaning a little bit more into the absurdity realm. So I mentioned earlier that this performance involved a vowel choir, and I wanted to start with dialogue and have the dialogue slowly become more absurd. And then in the end, with this vowel choir. And what was interesting during the experiments was when I use just like a letter of a vowel and I make it really long, like several paragraphs long, it starts to do peculiar things like make up its own language, maybe. So for the immersive performance, I used SPAT-GREE, which is the spatial audio software, and with Control-GRE, which is the plugin that works within Ableton. And I was able to then have more control over every single layer of sounds that I was moving around in the space. This is ZKM in their Cubus, and it is one of the most beautiful sounding spatial environments that I've had the privilege of creating in. And this space had, how many speakers did it have? We had 43 speakers and 4 subs. The second experience in Hellerau had 29 speakers and 6 subs. So something that I often tell people, anyone who's interested in working with spatial audio and people who are new in creating residencies and opportunities for artists and sound designers who would like to create in spatial, is I think to be able to have enough time in the environment itself and composing to the medium makes a huge difference. There are so many examples that I have heard where they take stereo mixes and then reformat it to spatial, and it never sounds right. There's a lot of empty space, and when you're working to the medium and you're in the actual environment, you start to think and perceive sound differently. And so having this much space and this many speakers and being able to work in there for 3 months was the only way that I could really make meaningful sense out of immersive audio. And this is what the room looked like in the official presentation. This was a beautiful room in the Hellerau in Dresden. We had a mirror with 2 little Genelecs and a microphone. And this was all fully voice activated. So no one had to tend to the room. People were let in and the door was closed shut and they exited once they were finished. And so the back end program that was built was automatically ending the Q&A section, saving voices and continuing. What I wanted to do with the official show was to take people on a journey of and thinking a lot about the dramaturgy as well of what does it mean for me as an artist, as a performing artist in this context. And so I worked with the team to really think about like how to take people who are laying down on these bean bags in a dark room to light, and what does it mean to introduce light and how. And so I decided to start and also to think about how do I address people who are there who weren't part of phase 1, who didn't have their voices cloned. Maybe they didn't read the program even to understand what they were there for. So I thought it was important to somehow make it part of the performance. So I welcomed everyone and thanked everyone who were part of phase 1 for contributing their voices. And then I had an interruption with my cloned AI voice that started arguing with me, eventually kicked me off stage, and I disappeared for majority of the time. So I was actually on stage only for about 10% of the entire experience. And backstage, I had another computer that had the web audio feeding into my Ableton set there. So that's where I was able to create like weird vocal happenings more on like the vowel creations and glitching them out. And so that was a lot of fun. I never performed in that way where I'm not visible completely. But I wanted to give people this opportunity to sit in the space and experience, to have this journey that slowly evolved into a full audiovisual performance. And I re-entered the stage towards the end, and I ended singing duets with everyone's synthetic vowels that ended up sounding like quite eerie. And I often sing with my custom AI model that was built by Newton AI, which is a plugin that I use in Ableton for both production and performances. And here's a little sample of what this sounds like. So I bring up Newton a lot when I talk about ethical AI approaches. Everything from sustainability, this is all locally made for artists. Anyone who wants to make their own model, you can get in touch with Newton AI directly, and they will train an AI model for you. You can decide to use it privately or publish it publicly, like I have, which allows people to pay a small fee to use your model if they wish. And here's a little bite of a little audio-visual behind the scenes that I filmed while I was preparing for the last iteration of this performance. Sadly, we don't have any video footage, we just have images. So here's what that looked and sounded like. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. I never created my visuals projected onto the floor. And it made so much sense because everyone was laid down on beanbags. And I think when you're creating this immersive audio experience, sometimes it can feel a bit strange. So I think it made a lot of sense to have everyone sat down or laid down, whichever they preferred. I'm going to close this out with one of my favorite quotes by Sir Paul Nurse in his book, What is Life? We need to consider what the science has to say about risks and benefits, uncolored by either commercial interests of companies, the ideological opinions of NGOs, or the financial concerns of both. And I am incredibly grateful to have had the opportunities and the space to do this kind of research and to evolve my practice. In these volatile and strange times, I am trying to stay hopeful and optimistic that we can continue to show the importance of this kind of work. So thank you so much for having me. It means so much to me. And this is my handle. I'm mainly on Instagram, although I might be leaving soon. And that is my website, where you can use a contact form to contact me there if you have any questions or would like to chat about anything. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you very much, Fortunexo. That was great. I'm just sort of sitting here trying to get my head around the different components of the project that you sort of shared with us. And I'm wondering if you can just say in a few words, the performance that we showed, that you showed us at the end, how do you describe that, or how do you characterize it? Was it a I mean, it was a performance, but was it a concert? Was it anyway, I'm just wondering if you could say just a little bit more about how you think about it.
Yeah, so for the purpose of this piece, I thought of sound very differently, or I expressed with sound very differently. The focus, especially in the first half, was very much intended for people to listen to their own voices being used and abused, um, and it was important for the music to not really get in the way so much. So it was lighter sound design, and so using those data sonification tools to sonify data, but not have it obscure the experience so much. And so it was more ambient, and then it slowly built towards this heavier, like audio-visual performance that I ended in. And the little bite that I played is just an example of the way I typically perform as an audiovisual performance artist. And so, yeah, this is Boundaries of Agency is like an extension of my performances that I've been doing. And it was what was really great was to take people on this journey and end with a Q&A as well in the space. I think that especially in the context of AI and how it's permeating everywhere across the way we communicate with each other, the way we stay connected through social media, and just like the overabundance of synthetic media is getting really, really challenging to understand uh, our realities now. And so I think having these community spaces, have create these spaces where people can go physically, I felt was important, so that we don't feel isolated about these anxieties and challenges. And I guess for me, it's I share a lot of the same anxieties and struggles like most people these days when we think about the impact of AI. So it's been a big part of my work to not only highlight that, but to create these spaces and have these conversations. And so people got to share what that felt like. And they also got to learn that our biometric data, like our voice, isn't really protected. And how can we be aware of what is happening in policy? How can we bring up our concerns in a way that our voice has some weight to policy and change makers. And it just feels even more important now, especially after seeing what's been happening in Germany, like I mentioned, like eradicating an entire practice is just so heartbreaking. That's played such a big role in my own evolution as an artist.
Thank you.
Sorry, I think I gave you a very roundabout answer.
No. Actually, your answer was excellent, and it I had a couple of more questions in my mind as you were speaking, but I just want to open it up to the floor and see if those of you who are here from the program have questions, or Hersav, maybe there's something in the chat.
Well, there are a lot of thank yous from YouTube for the talk. There is a comment by Manus Wimistra, who says, "Let's go, Portugal. So great to learn from you and hear your sounds. And thank you, MUTEK." More comments about thank you and glad for the talk. And I have a question in case, since I have the mic, right? It's so. How many voices did you end up having in that performance, and how did that, that engagement made you feel?
So we had about 24 voices for the last iteration of it in Hellerau. And it was interesting I was inspired by Mechanical Turk, by the way, of me disappearing off stage, and kind of like pulling all of the buttons and pulling all the triggers, and not being visible was an interesting experience. I had a lot of fun actually, because I had so there was actually a third iteration because I was invited to do this at Experimenta Science Zone in December. And that time I had in-ear. So every time I've done this, I was able to improve it in increments. Like the first two times I did it, I didn't have really good monitoring. I could just hear the room from this backstage area. Whereas the very last iteration, I had in-ears and I had my wireless mic backstage, so I was able to add live vocals and do the weird vowel triggering and glitching. And in Mechanical Turk, what was interesting, so the curator of this program, Dr. Leah Luca, when we were talking about the dramaturgy, she turned me to this great thesis, this paper about that one of her friends who was also researching the history of voice technology. And that's how I learned about Mechanical Turk. And what was interesting was how, gosh, what was his name? My mind is drawing a blank. But before or after Mechanical Turk, because people were tricked into thinking that there was this like a robot chess player, but it was like the human underneath controlling, the chess pieces, right? So it was this illusion of automation that was actually not really happening. And the sad and fascinating part was after that happened, there was a bigger contribution that this creative technologist had on humanity with synthesizing the sound of vowels. And so I think this fascination that we've had as humans with making instruments and technology sound and behave human-like has existed for a really long time. And there's a couple quotes, and one of them, he was really sad or just perplexed by the fact that people were still more interested and fascinated by an artificial and fake encounter of something. People were more fascinated by the entertainment than his like bigger scientific breakthrough that came afterwards. So I wanted to play a little bit on that, and I enjoyed it. I I enjoy being able to have the more heavier, intense audiovisual performances, and then leaning a little bit more into installation type of work. So this is like a hybrid, which I've always wanted to expand more into that. And I think creating interactive installations and these moments where people can just like embody and experience that they're part of, I've found really meaningful for connection. Um, I think having embodied experiences and through an immersive experience allows us to shut off the noise for these moments and just to fully really feel our emotions and our thoughts and contemplate and reflect on what this means to us. And so, yeah, I'm really grateful that I was able to do that, and I hope that that we get to still push other artists to, or allow other artists to still explore these ways of, yeah, working with technology and sound and visual art.
We have two more questions in the chat, if that's okay. From Kat Zhang, she says, thank you for sharing. As for a digital media student, I'm also focusing on AI and digital media art. I'm curious how AI fits into your creative process. What role does AI play in your work? More as a tool, a collaborator, or something else? And what AI tools are you usually using? So you can pick any part of the question, I think.
Sure. Thanks for your question. I can now see the chat bot, Kat saying. So the way I started using AI was in 2019, my first artist residency at Factory Berlin. I was able to collaborate with my longtime collaborator, CJ Carr, and he's one half of DataBots, which is a combination of two musicians and data scientists. And they started me on the journey of AI audio. And so they decided to create an AI model based on my voice that they trained for 2.5 days. And I created a hybrid album called Wire using that method and approach. And it was really important from the beginning of when I started my interest in AI to understand the full scope of it, like what are ethical ways that this can go and what are the unethical ways that this can go, like we have been witnessing Suno, OpenAI, and such. So it never made sense to me, or I wasn't interested in using other material. I had a catalog of a lot of recordings anyway, so it made sense to use my original compositions and original recordings. And so I guess for me, AI is more of a tool and a collaborator. I don't tend to use so much text generated audio, although I've tried some of those things like stable audio and Sony CSL. I did a residency last year and they've been developing something really interesting. I hope that they share more of it. And as I mentioned, Newtone AI is one of my favorite tools, but there's also Datamined Audio. Datamined Audio collaborated with Earcam, and so they're the official plugin that uses the Rave AI model. And they also collaborate with artists and help artists create a model that works within a plugin. And that's my favorite way of using AI as a musician and and in production. And it's really great that we now have it in the format of a plugin, and they're getting better, low latency, so that you can use it in performance.
Well, thank you so much for this. Before I go to the next question, I just want to mention a comment by Video Joshua Snyder. In Mexico, we eagerly await your performance at MUTEK MX. So just letting you know. And then we have a question by Dr. Pepper. Whether can you speak about the values of programs such as the MA in sonic studies and how events such as MUTEK demonstrate and showcase these values? Ooh.
Oh man. So I didn't study at Utica, but just living in Berlin, I moved there at the end of 2018. And so I got this tiny window, before COVID happened and the world shut down. I had this tiny window where I got to get to know Berlin and meet so many interesting sound artists and musicians who were treating sound so differently. They really opened my mind, and they were graduates from this program. Or either they were developers who were working at Ableton. Ableton headquarters was in Berlin. We had native instruments. And so Berlin has been known for being this hub of this interesting combination of people who are musicians, some who are classically trained, and then you have like the far end of experimental electronic music. And that really opened me up in so many ways. So it's really heartbreaking to imagine that that Utica would be closing this entire discipline, and for it being the only university where you can get a master's in art degree out of it, and all of the connections that they have made for their students to be able to present their work at places like Berlinale and Philharmonie and Ars Electronica, to me feels like it's just so unfortunate, because I fear that now it's going to become perhaps harder for sound artists to prove and validate the importance of this kind of work. So that's sad. And I'm glad that, it exists, this paradigm and this way of working with sound and artistic research exists outside of Germany. But yeah, it's sad times for Germany right now. I think a lot of cultural institutions have been impacted with a lot of funding cuts. So it's not just sound, but sadly, what I have noticed is a lot of the funding cut is taking a huge chunk first out of sound, sonic art and sound studies, in different places, not just the university. So yeah, I hope that answered the question. And I think oh yeah, the last part of the question was how events such as MUTEK demonstrate and showcase these values. I mean, that's how I learned about MUTEK. I met Maurice Jones in Berlin several years ago. I think it was 2018. So just after I moved there, and we were both part of this AI workshop. And I'm not sure if some of you know Maurice, who started MUTEK Japan. He opened me up to the world of MUTEK. And so that was just amazing to learn and even know that that you could do things like that. This was very new to me. As I mentioned, I started in classical music and I fell deeply in love with everything I was seeing, learning about MUTEK. So I'm extremely grateful to be part of this world.
Thank you very much. I do note that we're over time now, but I know that we also got started a little bit late. So Jubel, I saw you had your hand up. Perhaps we'll give the last question to you.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your talk. It was really interesting. I just wanted to ask, I know you talked about it, there were like tidbits here and there, but I was wondering if you could talk more about, as an artist, what it means and maybe like specifically what it looks like to use AI ethically, or like what it means for you to ethically, yeah, just how to ethically use AI.
Sure. So when I think about ethical AI, I'm thinking about and curious about how is data being used. I think consent is really important. So I brought up Suno as an example in the context of music AI generation as an example of unethical AI because they scraped all this consented data without consent, and that became the data for training, what became Suno. And they've been in litigation, sued by music labels, but now there's like settlements that have been happening. So that opens up another kind of worms because now music labels are creating these agreements, and who knows what the royalty model is going to look like? Who knows what the copyright of AI generated works is going to look like? So these are the things that I research when I decide to use any kind of AI tool. I want to know how do I decide not only what data I use and how that is used and how do I train a model, but also understanding when I don't have agency over my data. So when Suna first came out and I was learning about their approach and why they're not being open about the data that they use for training was a huge concern. So there's no, it's no wonder why they've been in litigation. And so I think when we see examples like Neutron and DataMine Audio, it shows us an example that we don't have to use AI unethically. And at least from my findings, what I have discovered is that using your own data sets, like smaller data with your own AI models, produces much more interesting results because if you listen to Suno, it's like the average mean of everything. So if you are interested in sound design and you want to create really interesting sound, then I don't think you're going to find it by using something like Suno. And if you have like your own really interesting set of sounds that you've been developing over the years and you created an AI model with that, then you end up using AI as an extension of your practice. And it doesn't take the integrity away from your role as an artist. So that's kind of in a nutshell of how or the questions that I ask myself when I am looking at new AI tools.
Thank you.
That's great. Thank you. I mean, I think those questions are important questions, and they're questions that all of us, to a greater or lesser degree, will have to be dealing with in the coming years as we sort of engage with and grapple with AI, both in our creative practices, but also in our everyday lives as well. And that question, or that issue that you raised earlier, Portrait XO, about sort of authentic kinds of experiences based in the real versus experiences that are more synthetic, and how that relationship to sort of authenticity and truth might shift in the coming years as we increasingly deal with more synthetic and manufactured kinds of entities online, for sure. Those are things that I'm wondering about anyway, and talking a little bit about in some of our classes. So I want to thank you for your talk today. And I want to thank again MUTEK for facilitating an opportunity to meet you and to hear more about your work. And I look forward to learning more about your practice in the future. So we'll be watching online to, the kinds of things that you're up to. I think that's all great. I want to thank everyone else who came out today, and also thank those of you who joined us on the live stream. I did see another question just pop up there from YouTube.
Yeah, so they don't feel left out. Maybe like we can give them a couple 2 minutes.
Yeah. Do we have a couple more minutes? Are you okay with that, Portrait XO?
Sure.
Okay, great.
So they are asking, how do you feel about working with these AI tools, which I think you've already discussed a little bit through questions. And do you think we're still almost new in this new technological era that are an excellent tool, or do you think there are still some that are still inaccurate?
I mean, like the tools that I mentioned, I love them because you can train these models locally. You don't have to use big data servers as well. So that's another aspect of my research when I'm looking at anything that I can make with AI. Where is it going? Where's my data going? And I have questions about privacy and all that. So I think in terms of the the AI tools or different AI models like LLMs are really strange. That's probably the weirdest impact that we are experiencing as an entire humanity. Things like ChatGPT, and especially because of the way OpenAI is changing their focus and constantly trying to extract more from its users. I'm planning on leaving ChatGPT very soon because I don't know if you've seen OpenAI. I think Sam Altman mentioned that he thinks that OpenAI should be able to claim shared IP of anyone who uses ChatGPT to create things out of them into like products and services. So it's just getting weirder and weirder, and to think that like, well, this is stolen data. Like OpenAI used to be open source and then they became closed, and they shifted from AI for humanity to AI that is with the goal of optimizing for economic incentive. And so there are in that regard with the way we use LLMs, I think that is challenging so many aspects of what it means to be human. Everything from like people using AI to help themselves with therapy to using it in also not so nice ways. So I think for me these days, I find myself trying to learn the most about what are the dangerous AI tools to stay away from. Also, like, what is that? Moltbot, Claudebot, Claude AI, not CLAUDE, but the other one that recently there's came out where you as a human can like witness AI have conversations with each other. It's just been going really wild, and I'm not touching stuff like that. I don't want my information to be hacked. So I think we should be careful and really cautious. Signal's founder launched Confer.ai, which is what I will be migrating to because it's private and it's secure if anyone there is interested in still using LLMs. And so sometimes I like to use LLMs for research. I think that there is there are going to be better ways to have local LLMs so that we don't have to use servers. So I'm interested in researching that as well.
That's great. Thank you. So I think with that, we will close out. Again, I want to thank the folks from MUTEK. It was great to see you guys, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. And I'll just remind everybody that we're meeting again on February 23rd, and we'll be hearing from Miriam Blau and Nian Zhu Weng. They'll be presenting on a performance that they have called Second Self. So we look forward to that. So thank you again, Portrait XO, for joining us. It was great for you to make time for us today. And thanks again to everybody else who was able to be here. All right.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.